Video 12, this is my last video in the series today, and again I hope that my microphone will continue to keep working, and I only cross my fingers on that. So the last thing I want to go over to you today is just those terms: inflation, I for inflation, DIS for disinflation, and DEF for deflation, and what they mean in terms of the CPI. So this week we have asked you to have a closer look at the Consumer Price Index and what exactly it is and what it's made up of. And I think this really will help you just cement what exactly inflation is and why this is our official measure of it. So this graph probably looks fairly familiar to you, right? It probably looks a lot like the business cycle, which I'm just going to draw over here. Okay, it is pretty similar, right? Pretty similar indeed. All right, it looks pretty similar, except when we use the business cycle, we tend to do like the wavy type thing. All right, Mr. Turrell, when he used to teach this topic, he likes to talk about the wave. And so the only difference is really that this here is real GDP. Okay, so not CPI, real GDP percentage change, but same idea of plus and minus. Okay, and the key things that I want you to remember is at the top, we call that the peak. Okay, when we're reaching the top and we're getting really high levels of GDP increases, that's the boom. Down here is the recovery. Let's put a star. Okay, this is RA plus, maybe might help, the recovery in the economy. The economy's starting to pick up again, real GDP is increasing. And down here is what we call recession. So we'll put like a negative here because that's not good. That means that your economy is actually, the production is declining, real GDP is negative. And this bit here, coming down the slope, the hill if you like, is the downturn. Okay, and downturn means that real GDP is increasing, but it's like disinflation, the rate at which it's increasing is falling. There's a bit of a hint to where we're going today. So let's get to this graph here, which does look similar, but we use bars, okay? Because I suppose you could have used a line graph, but actually I think I prefer to use bars, and commonly when you see it, we see bars, just showing the percentage change in the CPI. CPI is the official measure of inflation in New Zealand, and most countries have a similar index, which is called the same thing pretty much. So key things we want to look at is when the bar is above 0, that means there's been a positive increase in the CPI, or the price level is increasing. Okay, I'm trying to stick to the same color. Let's stick to black. All right, so when we're above here, the price level is increasing. Anywhere above 0, price level is increasing, probably an important point. Whereas if we're below 0, the price level is decreasing. Okay, like so. Okay, so if we look at the graph, we can therefore see that inflation is any of these periods here, okay? Just realized that I didn't put the horizontal axis measures time. It might help. So kind of imagine these are quarters of the year, every 3 months. So this is like 1, 2, 3, you get my drift, 4. So periods 1 to 4 is inflation. And then we have 5, 6, well, big time, 7, maybe New Zealand right now, 8, that's an 8, and 9. And what you can see here is that for periods 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, they're all below 0. So that indicates that the price level is falling. So you have negative inflation, which means that this is deflation. Okay, so I'm going to label 5 to 9, there's a little weird arrow, deflation. Okay, then you can see after periods 9, we have, let's call it 10, 11, 12, probably too many bars, maybe you should have done less, 13 and 14. All right, so since these are all above 0, that means the price level is increasing. So again, that is inflation. So we can label like so, that these are all inflation, okay? Now, at this point, you're probably like, well, where's disinflation then? Okay, because we've got, you're saying it's inflation here, right? And it is. These are all inflation. And you're saying that when we're below 0, when we experience negative values, that's deflation because the price level is falling. What's going on there? Yeah. So ask yourself, well, what's disinflation? Disinflation is here. Can you see it? I'll put DEF here. Right, where is the disinflation? Yep, if you remember from our video, which my team's class did a team session, we talked about this. Disinflation is where the rate of inflation is falling. So we can see here that we do have the price level rising, but hopefully what you can see is it's decreasing here. So it's starting from quite a high level, maybe like this is like 5, 4, 3, 2, or even 5, 3.5, 2.5. So the rate at which the price level is increasing is slowing down. That's why these periods here are what we call disinflation. Okay, disinflation. And just to give you some ideas of values, that's an S, oh gosh. Okay, with my black pen, like I said, maybe this is 5%. That's a terrible 5. And maybe, here we're hitting 3. Maybe this is like minus 0.5, just to give you an idea of values. That's a 5. And then we're getting down to like 2%. I know there's not an even scale here, but just to give you some ideas, you have like 5% inflation and then it's falling to 3. That's definitely disinflation. It's still rising, so it is inflation, but it's what we call particularly disinflation. Whereas when we're below the line and we're going like negative 0.5, that's definitely deflation. And then you can see that deflation is increasing if it goes to say negative 2% in Q7. Okay, still deflation, but it's like even worse. There isn't a name for that, sorry, when deflation is getting worse. There is a name for when inflation starts to get really high. So this is like well above 5 here, you can see. If it starts to get into like massive figures like, I don't know if there's a specific number for it, but I do encourage you to watch the video about Germany and hyperinflation, or these videos about Zimbabwe. When inflation gets out of control and it's like doubling, prices are doubling like every 10 minutes, hour type thing, like 100% inflation, 200%, that's what we call hyperinflation. Okay, so hyperinflation is when inflation is out of control. Basically, your money's worth nothing. We don't ever want that. Okay, so that's generally why people get worried about inflation, because they worry about incidents of that. Probably for us, we just don't want the cost of living to get too high. But we do want a little bit of inflation because that means that prices are rising, which does incentivize producers to produce more and helps us to allocate our scarce resources. We don't want deflation though, because think about it, that's great for consumers, but if prices are falling, then what's the incentive for producers to produce more and to hire more workers and to get the economy going? That's not a good thing either. So it's kind of like Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold, where it's just right. Okay, and my last thing I wanted to follow with you, here's a little challenge, so you could pause the video and have a go. Thinking about inflation, disinflation, and deflation, where would they fit in the business cycle? Bit of a challenge, right? So where, for example, inflation is probably a bit weirder. Maybe let's say, where would you see high levels of inflation in the business cycle? Are you going to say in a boom? Yeah, I would put high, H for high inflation here. Okay, whereas I would think that inflation will be pretty low here, so L inflation. Okay, so low levels of inflation when we're in recovery, but definitely the rate of the CPI increase would be higher for a boom. What about deflation? When would I expect to see deflation? That's right, it would be in a recession. Prices would be falling because production is falling. Okay, lots of sales going on as firms try to reduce the price to get it sold because there's little spending. Okay, so that's great. What about disinflation? When do you think you would see that? I did say it earlier. Yep, that's right. It's in the downturn. So this is where we see disinflation as economic activity in the economy slows down. The price level still rises, but it's starting to fall. The rate of it is starting to fall, and that happens in a downturn. Okay, so I think that's enough for today. I hope you enjoyed this, or it maybe has helped you in your journey to understand inflation and how it fits in with economic growth. If you have any questions, please let me know. Ka kite.